From Inform a Tech Target, I'm David Essex, and this is Enterprise Apps Unpacked. This new age of AI that we've been living in for the last 3 years has already developed some truisms. One is that you need near-perfect data. It's the old garbage in, garbage out concept. You can't get trustworthy answers from generative AI or good decisions and actions from agentic AI if the data they're working with hasn't been cleaned up and standardized first. But MyWave claims its AI agents avoid data issues and hallucinations through intelligent data orchestration and by fusing large language models with industry-specific process templates. MyWave also says its framework lets you create custom agents for different ERP systems faster than typical tools and use them in place of the on-premises customizations that are often the biggest roadblock to moving to cloud ERP. The CEO and founder, Geraldine McBride, has had a distinguished career. She joined SAP in 1994 to help launch R3, the company's longtime flagship. She was a senior leader at IBM, and starting in the early 2000s, president or CEO, first of SAP's Australia and New Zealand division, followed by Asia Pacific Japan, and then after a year as a VP at Dell, president of SAP North America. That was a time when few women held executive roles in tech companies. So she brings a wealth of experience in enterprise applications to her work at MyWave, which she co-founded with her daughter, Amy Johnson. We first met in May at the SAP Sapphire Conference in Orlando. I was intrigued by MyWave's claim to have agentic AI that works across legacy and cloud ERP and speeds up migrations to S/4HANA Cloud. In the podcast, we picked up our discussion by drilling down into how MyWave built its agentic AI and what it could mean for SAP in the future of ERP. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Enterprise Apps Unpacked for the real story on the software that runs your business. Geraldine, thanks very much for being on the podcast today.
Lovely to see you again, David.
When you and I met at this year's SAP Sapphire Conference, you talked about your early process of developing agentic AI, though I don't think it was called that at the time, and getting SAP to adopt it in its ERP products for small businesses. Can you share some of that history with our listeners?
Yeah, so for those of you who may not know me, I used to be the former president and CEO for SAP for North America and Asia Pacific Japan. And I left SAP about a decade ago. And the vision at that time was to be starting to build a very similar timeline to OpenAI building what they had as GPT LLMs. We focused on building enterprise AI agents, which were essentially being able to type into a computer interface and work is done by the agent. And in December of 2023, SAP called us into Waldorf, Germany, and asked us to perform a test of our AI agents. And they also were testing at the same time with Google, with Microsoft, and also with IBM Watson. At the end of the 4-day test that we had with their engineering, they were impressed with the speed at which we could actually create these new AI agents, how we could be putting these on both a mixture of on-premise SAP systems as well as cloud-based SAP systems. And they asked us then to start to work with them initially in their mid-market, the SMB market space. So this is where originally for Business One, SAP Business One and SAP Business by Design. Within a year of releasing our technology with SAP, we have over 150 SAP partners, including some of their biggest GSSPs now, their biggest global services partners. And we're also now putting our AI agents now onto SAP ECC and SAP S/4HANA in a new initiative called ROI Now, where we're now releasing all of the benefits and helping brownfields SAP customers release ROI and migrate faster into their new SAP system. So it's revolutionizing how work is being done inside the enterprise.
A major part of the breakthrough came from developing process models, as I understand it, for specific industries. What was that development process like, and how does it relate to your agentic AI technology?
Yeah, so when I started on this journey, we essentially went through a period of what I would call paid R&D. So we worked with some of the biggest brands on the planet in many industries where we trialed and tested out earlier versions of our platform. And these were paid R&D projects in the media, in government, in retail, in all kinds of different types of industries, banking, insurance, etc. Every corpus of knowledge we gained, every trial that we did, that we learned, we basically gathered more of the corpus of knowledge of enterprise process domain models. And this is where our secret sauce is. So if you look at the same time that GPT were working on the LLMs, we decided we did not want to go and focus on the large language models. We knew other companies were working on that. What we perfected was the ability for the enterprise process models that so they regulate the LLMs, they provide the guardrails to the LLMs so they cannot hallucinate. They are secure. They always do what they say on the tin. And so we have these dynamic agentic models that are always compliant to the way you want your business to run. And we can do this at scale because we've got this agentic platform where the partners can build those quickly. So this is the exciting thing around what we have taken to market and has been seen as by our partners as truly revolutionary.
So much of the recent discussion in the tech industry about using AI effectively is focused on the quality of the data, cleansing data, whether the data has inherent biases, for example. But you say MyWave doesn't need perfect data. How is that possible?
Yeah, so another key feature of the platform when we looked at the design elements was that our technology needed to have a brain, needed to have memory, it needed to be able to learn as it went and get smarter. But it also had another key element, which was the ability to dynamically orchestrate data no matter where it comes from. And because it could actually recursively learn, and also you could tell those models what your regulations were in a regulatory process, it could also be given the task to be able to orchestrate data and also cleanse data as it's orchestrating it. Because a lot of the problems of data today and why data is imperfect or messy is because data is not being continuously refreshed, like stagnant data pools. So some of our AI agents are not only able to orchestrate data from any source, whether it's SAP or Oracle or Salesforce or any non-SAP system. We've got insurance companies, for example, orchestrating over 6 or 7 different systems, taking work today that used to take 20 minutes, taking that down to 40 seconds, and is orchestrating data from both internal sources and external sources. And so an important design element of the agentic platform is we don't need to ingest data. We can make use of data, even imperfect data, and whilst it's doing its work, it is then updating and refreshing the data in those core systems of record so that you are getting then accurate data whilst the agent is doing its work. The agents can also be either autonomous, so they can be triggered by an event or an email or data has changed somewhere, so context, or you can have these as human in the loop agents where a human says, I want something to be done, and the agent then goes off and does the work for you.
Also, in our Sapphire discussion back in the spring, you said MyWave's AI doesn't hallucinate. What's your success rate with that? Do you have statistical evidence or some other kind of evidence that shows that it doesn't hallucinate?
Yeah. The reason why they don't hallucinate is that if you look at the way LLMs I've discussed this many times with Gartner because Gartner have made the same observations as we did originally. LLMs are amazing, but they cannot execute work. They're there to give you information. They're there to summarize things. They're really good at content. And the other thing, but it's because they're probabilistic models. But when you combine, and this is where our secret sauce is, we have the ability to mix probabilistic with deterministic. But they're not done in static, hard-coded models. These models actually can flex. They can go through happy paths and unhappy paths. The brain of the technology can recursively learn and actually take a different next best action the next time. But the guardrails of the deterministic side of our technology means that it will never do a non-compliant bank loan, or it will never do a non-compliant insurance claims process or a non-compliant set of pricing for that insurance claim, or in the case of SAP, that it always now accords to the standards that SAP would expect in terms of the quality of the data. So, and the reason we don't need to even rag train our LLMs either, because the models, the domain models of the process or the industry, we just tell the AI agent what needs to be true in order for this to be a valid process. And we've now trained it to a point where I'll make my agent, which actually can now create a brand new process from scratch, not just like me having to drag and drop, which was what everyone's doing. But you just feed to it. I want this type of process. I want it to do these outcomes. It must do these things in this particular way. Here are my regulations. And it will actually build the agent for you. So we've been on this curve and this journey now between 8 and 10 years with a lot of paid R&D projects. Now we have a mature, secure, scalable, non-hallucinating agentic platform ready now for any industry and any system of record vendor to be able to adopt it and make use of it very quickly.
You said that it's important for AI agents to be able to work together. What has MyWave done to make that happen?
Yeah. So again, if we think about orchestration, one of the early design points of our technology was the ability to orchestrate not only data from any source, but anything else that is also taking action. They could be drones, they could be bots, they can be other agents. So we have a thing called them like a multi-agent framework where our agents are orchestrating each other. So if you look at an order to cash end-to-end process, we will have multiple agents that are working together to deliver an outcome across that end-to-end process. And you can string, we call them daisy chaining agents together. But we can also orchestrate non-MyWave agents. They could be SAP Joule agents. We're working with SAP's Gen AI Hub. We can run on SAP's BTP, but we're not dependent on BTP either. So it means that what that means is that we have the ability, because we're also following the agent to agent framework approach that Google has proposed, it means that all agents in the end are going to be able to work with each other. As agent density increases and they start to come across every single process, whether they are an AWS Bedrock agent or whether they are an agent from Google or there's something that someone's created in LangChain, in the end, they all will form an intelligent layer across the planet where work is going to be done. And so we're seeing this, we're at the beginning of that adoption cycle.
Do there need to be more industry standards or maybe independent standards beyond the Google one that you mentioned for the agent to agent collaboration or interoperability to be good or
Yeah.
sufficient?
I think interoperability is going to become very important. Nobody wants to have islands. I think that this is where we as an industry need to harmonize the ways in which these AI agents will be working with each other. I think the agent to agent frameworks are important. We're also working with SAP on their new SDKs that they're bringing up in terms of the Joule technology, also working with their AI agent hub that they're also releasing as well. So essentially, our agents are working with Joule, can work on SAP's hubs, but equally, everyone is going to have a hub. Everyone has an agentic hub where they are creating their new agents. So I think that as an industry, we are already collaborating, but I think that also with time, more can be done there as well. As I said, there's going to be no one agent to rule them all. They're all going to essentially shake hands and pass off work between each other.
How does MyWave's technology work with the AI that SAP has itself built into its software, especially the Joule copilot, so the two complement each other instead of duplicating or even competing with each other?
Yeah. Well, I think we've been very deliberate in our thinking around not competing with each other. We're very complementary. And in fact, we've got three-way collaborations already going between some of our bigger partners, SAP and MyWave. And I think that's important. So we're aligning our product roadmaps. If you think about it, MyWave is working across 27 different industries. And then we look at it from a matrix point of view. Think about all the industries across the planet. Then think about all the different business areas within those industries. MyWave has AI agents across a number of them. If you look at SAP's Joule and Joule Copilot as it is today, and as they're bringing out their own agentic framework, they are doing that now deep within the SAP system. MyWave's AI agents are actually agnostic. They're agnostic to the LLMs. So we obviously work with SAP's Gen AI Hub. We run on SAP's BTP. We're certified with SAP BTP, but we're not dependent on those either. If a client came along and said, well, I need connections between two other systems, like an EIS and an Oracle system, if it was an insurance. So we go wider than SAP, and I think that's the first point. And in terms of the collaboration that we have, the strategic collaboration is that the AI agents can trigger MyWave. MyWave can trigger Joule. That means that something can happen inside SAP Joule, it then hands over to MyWave and vice versa, so that they actually are able to seamlessly work with each other. But if you look at where we're being deployed a lot today, we're being deployed a lot by partners into the SAP brownfields environments. And in ROI now, Joule obviously is not present in the on-premise world. So what we're doing there is we're taking a client and we're releasing the AI agents with the partner in the legacy cloud ERP world, releasing immediate value of those AI agents in the current world. But we're also using it to accelerate because we're moving the client to clean core much faster. So the enterprise customer is getting the value of the agent. We are then driving down the cost because our AI agents are replacing a lot of their legacy add-ons into the old world, which then speeds up the migration into the new world. And in fact, we've got one other person that used to work for me inside SAP. We're working on things like, even with the Z codes, you can have an agent actually working out what's in the Z codes. What does this piece of software do that was an add-on? What do the fields do? You can feed that to the Make My Agent and MyWave, and we can now go and turn that into a brand new agent within days or weeks. And then you've now got your new capabilities in the new world, and you can then just actually decommission a lot of your old add-ons, which means clean core to your new environment means that you can now speed up your migration. So this is all about how do you speed up legacy ERP to cloud ERP and moving all those 30,000 customers across much, much faster, which is what we're working on with SAP and the partners.
This ability to seemingly work across the on-premises and the cloud ERP was one of the things that really got me interested in meeting you at Sapphire and talking about this. Can you drill down into that a little bit? You've touched on it already, because we're usually told that doing good AI, the modern version of AI, requires the processing power of the cloud and, I guess, the accessibility across more users and more locations that the cloud, especially SaaS, enables. So it almost seems like a miracle. So I'm wondering if you can describe how you pull that off.
Yeah, well, actually, the design goal for that came when we incubated MyWave inside banks originally back in the R&D phase. And a number of the banks said, well, actually, we don't want it to be in the cloud being shared by, in fact, multi-tenanted SaaS was like an anathema to banks. They cared about security. They wanted things to be on-premise. So this is what actually we said, okay, so one of the design objectives of our agentic technology must be able to support that, which is why we became that way. And it's actually become a bit of a superpower because if you think about what MyWave does, MyWave runs behind the firewall of the client, and it can run on-premise or it can run in the cloud. And in fact, it can run on-premise and in the cloud simultaneously. And if you've got multiple instances of your SAP around the world, we can be orchestrating data dynamically across any of those, running them. There are a one SAP system, like where inventory is, how do I do sales order processing, etc. So you can run all of these. And so it's because we have the dynamic orchestration of data. But the design ethos is it's the same AI agents. We just basically containerize them in a different way. So they are either containerized to run on the cloud or they're running on-prem. Obviously, the LLM, so the large language models that they're using, and we sort of support standard out of the box. We like the Azure GPT releases of these AI agents. We find those agents are very good from an industry robustness point of view, but we're agnostic to any of the agents. And again, going back to SAP's Gen AI Hub, because they're providing those agents and you can have private versions of those agents that are secure, released for the enterprise, where even though our agents are running on premise, they are talking to the LLM, which will be running in the cloud, either your private version of that, like Mistral, or it could be the Azure GPT one or your own private version if you want private, or it could be the shared version, but we can set it up in a way where there is no retained memory. You're not losing or leaking any data. So there is nothing being leaked. We're just making use of the LLM to go and read a purchase order, for example, so that we can then turn that into data that we can then make use of by the agent. So the technology, the platform itself actually has the smarts to be able to do that at the runtime level. We just basically say, is this runtime now going to be containerized for AWS? Or is it going to run and now be an on-prem instance? Is it even going to work with on-prem for HANA, for example, not cloud? So we've got basically the same agents, different dynamic plugins that support those. And the platform is flexible enough to be able to run across all of those simultaneously if you wanted to, if you had that level of complexity of environment.
Are there some other ways that you're collaborating with SAP beyond the areas that we've been talking about?
Yeah, so we think that SAP's strategy is actually really smart. So we love their notion of the business data cloud. So we've said that we don't mind if data is messy. And we don't need, we're not dependent on that from an architectural point of view. We can actually take messy data, we can enrich it, we can make use of it, we can turn it into something that's better. So I think that business data cloud is going to be another interesting area, because what happens there is we're going to be given enriched tidy data, which means that we can do all sorts of more interesting things there. Around the Joule studio and Joule, we've got collaborations there as well. And then also for BTP, we think that BTP is a really good stack of technology. It actually makes our life much easier. In fact, if we put MyWave on BTP, it actually means that we can actually connect through Kima to basically anything. So actually it's even faster and easier, and we don't even have to think too much with that, because it's just such a beautiful framework to be able to put MyWave AI agents in it. The other area that we find a lot of use of our AI agents are where there are gaps between different systems. Like you might have a commerce hybrid system with an SAP traditional core ERP and an Oracle system. And some of these companies, they have roomfuls of people because orders fail between these different systems, and they then have to work out where did it fail and how do I fix it. So a lot of MyWave's cases are also in these section points where data and processes just fall apart and get lost. Because we have the intelligent orchestration of an agent now can find why did the order fail, where did it fail, and then fix it. And so we're replacing hundreds of people who are in these rooms trying to work out between the different groups how to fix the processes. So we're often given the gnarliest problems because we don't just do simple tasks. When I left SAP and when we tested this product in the market, it was how do you now deliver an agent that can deliver a complex end-to-end outcome where these agents work together either individually or together in swarms or in half a dozen agents that are able to deliver the outcome, and the humans are no longer having to be stuck down in that level of detail of work. And we can do that reliably, and we can do that at scale. I don't think many people have cracked that code yet. They're all still construction sites. It's because I had a vision 8-9 years ago, and we've been working on it, is why we can emerge now as one of the smartest kids on the block, because our technology is ready now, it's mature, it does what it says on the tin, it's scalable, it's been tested, and this is why we're growing so rapidly. Our biggest challenge now is just managing the growth we have across the planet.
What do you envision to be the role of agentic AI in the future of ERP? There have been so many efforts over the years to make the user experience easier. And more recently, it's almost to sort of insulate the user from the old commands and the other back end details. How can agentic AI help to advance this overall effort to improve ERP's usability?
I think that ERP is functionally incredibly rich, whether you are looking at insurance core systems, banking core systems, SAP core ERP systems, all of these systems of record that we've been created over the last 20, 30, 40 years. And in fact, we've done work inside airlines where some of the core systems running airlines today are 40, 50-year-old code. Some of it's still written in COBOL. And so what's happening is that all of this code is dropping down in the geological layer, and it needs to, because it is much slower. It's heavy to maintain it. So what you want to do is you want to turn that into steady state. You're not any longer innovating at the coding level. You're innovating now at the model level. And that is what you're now doing with models and data. So I have a vision where I think that ERPs, for example, it's model-driven ERP. All of the models that MyWave has now, we actually have now the end-to-end processes sitting in models, so that the model then is doing a lot of the execution at one level, and then it works hand in glove then with the code underneath. So the code that sits over in an SAP system, or even in a core system of record for, say, an insurance or a banking application, it is now feeding data to and from that. Now, there are many people in many schools of thought that believe over the next 10, 15 years, and I'm probably sitting in that school of thought as well, is that the underlying code eventually will be replaced. All of the new innovation for the future of technology and software is going to be at a model-driven level. Why? Because it is much easier to be able to open up a model and change a model than it is to be able to actually write core code. Now, there's always going to be core code underneath that drive engines. So you are going to have engines, and I call these the agentic engines. And our technology platform, our core engine, we have core engines. And then you have your models that then run on top of that then run on top of or work with the SAP systems. Now, I think the job that SAP has to do now is ultimately a lot of what is sitting deep down inside SAP is going to now be enabled by Joule. So Joule will become the new user interface of SAP. And then agents like ours then will also become part of those newer user interfaces. So you look at the way in which all of the AI agents are even looking, they all look similar. You've got a command line, you've got things that they can do, and they're either working autonomously or they're working alongside you if it's a copilot. And so humans are getting very used to working that way. So menus will disappear. I will predict in this next generation, as 80% of the boomer generation retires in this next decade, the next generation are going to be just typing into an interface and work is done. They will not want to be embracing the complexity of menu-driven systems with tables and all of the old-fashioned ways that we work with software today. That's why I left SAP 9 years, 10 years ago, because I could see that even then, that all needed to change. The world had to go past Fiori tiles.
That might be the kind of work, all this tedium involving ERP, that people won't mind turning over to AI. Right now, there's some resistance, obviously, but it sounds like a really good use of AI.
Yeah, it's get rid of the tedium. I think to your point, think about all of the value add. Like SAP is so functionally rich. It's an amazing piece of software. But think of then all of the roomfuls of people you have now that have to serve it in order to get it to do its work. And that's not just SAP, that's Oracle, that's Salesforce. All of the software has the same problem. Why wouldn't you now have the software working for you as opposed to you working for the software? Paradigm shift. It says you should be able to now tell the software what you want it to do, and that work is done. And that is what we have created. That's what gets me out of bed every morning, because life is too short to have roomfuls of hundreds of people. We are replacing hundreds of bots, because those bots also were not very clever or smart, and we're replacing hundreds of roomfuls of people and saving money. So if you can now process an insurance claim, as an example, that did take 20 minutes per claim to do a claim pre-check, and you can do that now in 40 seconds, what else can you do now with the time of that human being? And then you then have to say, well, actually, in the end, you don't even need some of those people doing that work, because claims pre-check can be done automatically by an agent. And you just turn over the exceptions of where it doesn't meet the criteria, because the guardrails say, actually, this one is outside our tolerance. This is outside of what the FMA would tolerate, of being able to do that, or this is outside of our policy guidelines. You've got the most perfect, compliant, obedient, 24-hour a day, 7-day a week employee that costs you less than $4 an hour. Why do you think the onshoring of the factories into North America will be robots and agents, and humans are going to be graduating from colleges to manage agents? So we're going to be managing agents, not having people who are data processing clerks.
Well, Geraldine, it's been great to talk to you again. I really appreciate your coming on the podcast.
No, thank you for having me, David. It's a pleasure talking with you today, and happy to continue that conversation. There's a lot that could be talked about on the future of what will happen to American manufacturing sites.
Thank you for listening to Enterprise Apps Unpacked, where we give the real story on the software that runs your business. To learn more about business applications, explore our content on searcherp.com. Find us on YouTube at our channel, Eye on Tech. Subscribe to our podcast to receive the latest episodes as they drop. And if you liked what you heard today, give us a rating and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Until next time.
Podcast programming and promotion by Kelsey Waddell. Podcast production and quality oversight by Anne Steshu. Music supplied by DP via Getty Images. This is an Informa Tech Target production.